According to principles of existential psychology, Umwelt, the German word for nature, is the mirror of the soul, the mirror of your true core being that gets covered up in all this stuff. Society, Mitwelt, is the mirror of the ego. So the person who spends too much time in the urban environment, and I'm saying, it's nothing wrong with being social and being part of a society, but if it's exclusive and you don't factor in the Umwelt, then the being that you are is entirely ego-based. The creation is not actually a creation. It wasn't created. It is creative. The universe itself, the creation, is creative in and of itself.
Yeah.
Any supernatural explanation of how it got created is what I call mysteria, absolutely ridiculous falsity. So, and even pantheism, that's why I'm not quite a pantheist, because that still says an external God in a supernatural place came in and created the world. That's not what I understand. God is in our world, all right, but we created it as an explanation, not a very good one, I'm afraid. And so the universe is itself self-sustaining and negentropic, and there's no beginning and no end, right? So this goes out. Big Bang theory, any of that theory, Big Bang is okay, but it's not the beginning. It is another emanation or phenomena of something that has no beginning. In other words, it's more like a change that happened in the cosmic order, but it is by no means, and it's completely wrong to associate it with a beginning. And this has already been critiqued by some of the scientists of the highest emanations. Hanne Alfvén from Sweden, Walter Russell, the plasma cosmology. That's already been cancelled. But again, it's the myth that everybody wants to believe, right? Because in that insecurity, on the metaphysical level, we not only need the God, the All-Father, but we need the beginning and the end, because what are they? They're structures. Study the nature of the oppressed lover of servitude. What? Right? Study the fact that the masses, for some reason, are interested in servitude. Don't possess the savvy to combat evil on the level that we're talking about. They're far more likely to identify with it in the name of safety, security, health. So yeah. Our audience, the people into this, yeah. You know what to do, to study them.
Civilization is the progress toward a society of privacy. Civilization is the process of setting man free from man. So there's your privacy, your personalism. But she goes on to say, civilization is the process of setting man free from men. What a deep, wise statement that is. I don't know, but this should be contemplated deeply. It's the essence of what she is talking about. Man doesn't realize he's enslaved by the collective at all. And you wouldn't realize it, would you? Because you've been raised by it. You've been breastfed by it. Unless your parents were exceptionally enlightened, exceptionally individualistic. You wouldn't even know this and probably live your whole life not knowing it. Not even thinking about the one against the many. It's been there since Plato. It's been there since Socrates. Doesn't mean anybody actually is concerned with it as a problem, but it is a problem.
Tyranny, as I said, is not in your face. It's not necessarily a jackboot type of control. It's a very surreptitious form of control done over many, many years and decades. To do what? To get people into hive mentality and groupthink, and also to basically, fundamentally, this is how the psychology ties in my work, is to erode a man's sense of selfhood. But basically the spirit of man, the man's sense of independence, is slowly collectivized. And I want to speak about it specifically. I like to look into the exact roots of why this is happening. And the slow erosion of people's selfhood not only makes them collectivized, but it forces them into hive think, which makes them deeply dependent on the approval of other people around them, and ultimately on the approval of bosses, you see, in the state and the establishment, the politicians, the priests. In other words, the famous authority figures that we all know about. The more you become dependent on these people, and now we're even becoming dependent on what I would describe as technocrats, the builders of the scientific purgatory, the global. What is the anatomy of your consciousness? What is thinking? How do you think? What is thinking? How does that happen? What is thought? Who's thinking about thought? Because if you don't ask these questions, you're not going to have too much of an understanding of what might be spirit or all of that. You're looking for the spiritual, but if you don't know what you are, how can you ever find out the other? So the real journey now begins. All of these traumas and tragedies are in a way a catalyst.
sad but true that man has to learn through tragedy. But then, hey, wait a minute, even the Greeks knew that as far back as you go, if man is left without tragedy, he'll just sit on his ass and do nothing all day long. He will sun himself, and he will take care of his narcissistic, personal, sensationalistic needs, and nothing of any other thing will cross his mind ever. So unfortunately, the universe, nature, whatever you want to call it, fate, has to sort of deliver man what we would call tragedy, you know.
It's perfectly okay to recapitulate. Take time out. Don't hurry, because hurry is not only mysteria, hurry is the anxiety of the world. The trickery of the world to enslave you is to make you think you're against the clock. Anyone listening to the sound of our voices right now, anyone in this movement who thinks that there's a hurry on, they're under the control of the beast. And I say every single one of the people listening to this is caught in that. Very few are the ones who have worked this out, what we're saying. Take a breath. Realize that that's part of the tyranny. It's not that time is necessarily bad, but it has adversarial qualities, especially if it's used in the wrong.
And Yolanda Jacobi, in her book The Way of Individuation, writes on the dehumanization of conformity and submission that we find more and more in our modern world. She says all too many people do not live their own lives, and generally they know next to nothing about their real natures. They make convulsive efforts to adapt, not to stand out in any way, to do exactly what the opinions, rules, regulations, and habits of the environment demand as being right. They're slaves of what people think and of what people do, etc.
Rand says that psychologically the choice to think or not is the choice to focus or not. Existentially, the choice is to focus or not is the choice to be conscious or not. Metaphysically, the choice to be conscious or not is the choice of life and death. It's simply that.
So our modern age is an age of anxiety and also fear, because fear is the mind killer. And so they manufacture all sorts of Dr. Strangelove Frankensteinian stories about the world to come, and you just go, well, that's it. We'll be immobilized. I'll have a band or my cell phone, and they'll know where I am, and I won't be able to move, and I won't be able to do it. And all of this is potentially true. But there's an equal case for the possibility of bringing those things to bear, as much as there is the theory that they can be put in place. Anyone who studied the Brotherhood for 5 minutes properly and sincerely knows that it is through the fear that they generate within me that they not only feed off, but control us all. It's an invisible enemy. The other stuff, at least, you know, maybe I can do something about that, or move to the country, or, you know, so the human race might rise up and might. But while I'm waiting for that, I'm drowning in psychological terror. That is the control mechanism.